Hi there everybody. I just want to do a little testimony of how I got off heroin and the struggles I went through and a bit of my background. So where should I start? Um, when I was a young lad and I left school at 16, I started using soft drugs, anything from like weed, um, cocaine and amphetamines. If you can call them light drugs, I don't think you can really. Every drug's a hard drug if you ask me. The little drugs that everybody calls soft drugs open the door to even harder drugs. They're just gateways to other drugs. So from 15 onwards, I was always using smoking cannabis, getting into petty crime, stealing, um, breaking into sheds, breaking into cars with my friends up until I was about 17, 18. Then I started going drinking, still smoking drugs, using other drugs, class A drugs, cocaine, ecstasy, and other drugs like that. I did fall out of school with no education. I believe drugs were a part of it. When I got to, after using drugs continuously and getting involved in numerous crimes and being arrested on many occasions, I came to the point when I was about 25 and I was still smoking weed at the time. And what happened was when I went round my friend's house, my friend used to smoke heroin. I knew what it was. I weren't stupid. I went round the house and I said to my friend, "Can I have some of that?" My friend smoked heroin. He smoked it in joints, spliffs, whatever you understand as a roll up, a fag. He'd sprinkle the powder in and we'd smoke it. I asked for some the first time. He told me and I knew what it was. I weren't silly. So I said, "Give me some." So I had a few puffs of this joint, and before you know it, I was sick. So I went upstairs, I was sick, come back down, I said, "Can I have some more of that?" It was just sort of a feeling that made you feel good, but even I was being sick. The only way I could describe it is probably when you first start drinking alcohol, and it makes you sick, but you still seem to go back to it. So, over a period of about 3 weeks, I was using heroin every day around my friend's house. And my friend said to me on about the 3rd week, I was feeling a little bit rough. I never thought it'd make me feel rough. I don't believe when you first try it, when they say one go, you're addicted. But after about 3 weeks, I went round my friend's house and I said to my friend, "Have you got some more heroin?" And he said to me, "I'm sorry, but I can't afford to keep giving you heroin. You're going to have to go and get your own." And that was a shock to me because I was starting to feel really bad. So really, that was the day when my life went on a downward spiral. I did have numerous jobs throughout these events that were happening, but I could never hold a job down seriously or long enough because what had happened is if I never had the drug, I would actually be ill, too ill to go to work. So it'd be either I'd go to work and be ill, or wait, stay off, find the drug and make yourself better. So after about the 3rd or 4th week, my friend says, "Right, that's it. You've got to start finding your own way of getting your own drugs and supplying it for yourself." So that sent me on a spiral of crime. I was always a good guy. I was brought up to respect my elders and have respect for those around me. And so my friends, they knew I was a good person. The drugs, they made me do things throughout my life that was quite terrible, to be honest. So obviously I got on a course of heroin. Before you know it, I was shoplifting every single day of the week, spending anything between £20 and £60, £70 on drugs. Sometimes it could have been more, just depending on how good the haul was from the day that you'd just been stealing all day. When I started using the drug, it made me really ill. Without it, I just couldn't operate. It got to a point where I didn't take it for pleasure. I was taking it because I was ill and I just wanted to feel better, and it was the only way. The only way I could say it is it was all my life. Heroin consumed my whole life, my whole time, every day. It was the first thing I'd done when I got up on a morning was thought about heroin. My whole day consisted of how can I get heroin. So it'd be planning on where I can go and steal, how I could get as much goods as I could to go and sell my stuff to the criminals and whoever else would buy it, then come home and smoke the drug. So it was literally a cycle, every day the same thing. On numerous occasions I was arrested, few times I can honestly say I did some quite bad things, while I was on that drug. And being the sort of guy I was always quite a nice guy, and crime weren't my thing. But what happened was, I got involved with a load of guys that literally, even if they had heroin enough to feed their habits for the day, they just loved committing crime. They were quite a nasty bunch of guys. So for me to be hanging around with these sort of people, it was quite a bad experience for me, because these were ruthless criminals that just literally do anything to get their drug, and even if they had the drug, they wanted more money on top. With me, I was quite happily going out, just getting enough drugs to make me better, and then I'd go home. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to go out and commit extra crimes, and these people thrived off it. But throughout all this period, I'd been arrested, put on probation. I was put in a rehab, that done nothing. And obviously I'd left my mum. I had a boy, and my mum said to me, I'm taking your son off your choice. You cannot even look after yourself, so I'm going to take your boy. So my mum took custody of my boy. And I just said to mum, look, that's fair dues. There's nothing I can do, I can't even look after myself. So I'm quite happy, and my mum's a good woman. So she took custody of my son, and throughout that she was praying to God. But at the time, I just think people praying to God, you just think, what's all that? But family members had told her, that's it, he's lost, you're never going to get him back. And my mum, she weren't a real believer, but she just said to me, no, I believe God's going to bring him back. I believe that God will get him off the drugs. And every day they'd be around there putting doubts in her mind, saying he's gone. So over a period of about 3 or 4 years, that's it, I was hooked, full blown on heroin, every day in and out. I got put in a rehab. Before you know it, I was on methadone, a substitute, but all the methadone did, I just used the methadone when I couldn't get heroin. And if I got the methadone, then I just used heroin on top. It was just like an extra way of getting stoned. I went to a drug place, and they just kept increasing my methadone. Before you know it, at the end of about 4 years, I was on about 130 ml a day, which is like it's probably about half a milk bottle full of green poison. I thought the only way I could put it, it's probably stronger than heroin. So obviously I was on that. Throughout all this, my mum and that was still praying, hoping that God would somehow deliver me from this drug. Within 5 years, literally, in the end, I got caught shoplifting. It was probably about £1,000 worth of stock I took out of this shop. The shop was a Debenhams store. I'd been hitting it every day for about a week, £1,000 each time. And what happened is, one day I went to come out, and as a heroin addict, you're that stupid, you think you can keep doing it same time every day. Before you know it, they were waiting for me, because that much stock had gone. They was waiting for me, so they got me at the doors when I come out. I used to use like a big pram, and it was empty, so I'd just pull the hood up, pretend I had a child in it, I'd push it in, I'd fold all the clothes up on coat hangers and just stick them in the top or stick them in the bottom and just pull the hood forward. That's how I'd do it, because when you go in a shop and you got a baby, people normally wouldn't look at you. But I didn't have a baby, I just had a pram that was empty, and I used to fill it up with stolen stuff. So after that, I got arrested and they put me in prison. I'd done about 12 weeks in prison. To be honest, prison didn't help me at all. They just stuck you in prison, you were still on methadone. The old way probably would have been better, when they used to make people go cold turkey, and actually it was rough. They'd make you'd have to come off it because it was that rough. So throughout all that, my brother and my mum were praying for me. My brother was like a bit sceptical. They didn't want nothing to do with me, because every time I'd turn up a week later saying I'm off drugs, can I lend a tenner? That was my same excuse every couple of weeks. And it got to the point where my family members, although they loved me, they really didn't want me around, because to be honest, I couldn't be trusted. I just wanted to, it weren't a matter of being nasty to my family. The drug, I was that ill, I had to, if I could find £5 or £10 notes lying around, I would take it, because that's how bad I was. And even at the risk of causing offence to my family, and that drug, it destroys people's lives. So what happened is, over this 5-year period, my mum she was just praying, because she didn't know if she'd get a phone call, if I was going to be dead one day. Luckily, throughout it all, I never moved on to injecting it. Throughout it all, I went from smoking it to smoking it on tinfoil, which is called, in England, we call it chasing the dragon. It's where you put it on tinfoil and you burn it and you make a little tube and you suck it and run it up and down the actual foil in lines. And so what happened is, I don't know what it was, but God must have put it in me from when I was young. I was always quite scared of the dentist and needles. So when I got up to the point where I was using heroin, even if I was desperate, I'd be with guys and they'd be sticking needles in their arm. Some of the guys, they smelled like they were rotting, and it was bad. But what kept me from the needle, it's just as bad I was smoking it, but what kept me from the needle was, I think I had a bit of a phobia, to be honest, and probably it was God putting it inside me, don't go down that road. Plus, I used to like the ritual of getting it all out, putting it on the foil. I used to look at the guys that injected it, and I couldn't see how they were getting happy, because what happened is the veins had collapsed over a period of time. So they'd spend 2 hours, 3 hours getting the drug, shoplifting, then getting the drug, and then they wouldn't be able to put it in their arm. And I used to just think to myself, God, I would never want to be in that state. It's bad enough trying to shoplift, bad enough trying to source the drug, because drug dealers keep you waiting for hours. They'll say 10 minutes, I'll be there. You ring a local drug dealer up, they know you're going to be there forever. Before you know it, you've probably spent all your money trying to call the drug dealer. By the time he gets here, you're about £10 shy of what you told him you had, because they've left you there for hours waiting on the corner of the side of the road. Probably 2 hours sometimes I waited for drugs. They've literally got you, it's like a hook. They know they've got full control of you, and they don't care. They're merciless. They just leave you waiting on the corner of a street for 2 hours, and every time you ring them, I'm just around the corner, I'm just around the corner. I'm sure many of you heroin guys that have been on heroin know the drill. But all I want to do is get on here and say that there is hope for you guys. Don't ever think that there's no hope, because I'll tell you one thing, that's where I was. I lived and breathed heroin, and I actually loved it. Got to the point where I loved it. But although inside my bottom of my heart I wanted off it, there was no strength or power there to get off it. There was nothing. When I went to prison, when I went in rehabs, I was forced into these places. So it done me no good. It weren't my own will. I was forced. So all I was thinking, I'm going to get out of prison. I can't wait for a big smoke. And I think that's how a lot of guys think. Because they haven't tried and got off it themselves, they just think, well, you forced me off it. I've been nicked. I've been put in the cop shop, the police station. I've been sent to prison. The first thing I'll do when I get out is I'm going for a big smoke. And yeah, don't get me wrong, that's what I was thinking. That was my mentality. But after about 5 or 6 years, I had a few problems in my life, and I just thought, wow, that was it. I was about 8 stone. I looked like something that had just come out of a World War II camp. And I was really ill, and my teeth and everything was affected. Literally, I was just I was rotting from inside out. And my brother, he did use recreational drugs to start with, but then he settled down, had a family. But what happened with my brother was, he was on holiday by some coincidence in some Turkish mountains, and he went up into this church in the middle of the mountains to pray. And while he was up there, he just says, God, brother's not really a practicing believer, but he did believe there was a God out there. And he says, oh, Lord, man, bring my brother back, get him off the drugs, When I get back off holiday, I'll just pray you look after him, because obviously it's my brother, and I'm his brother, and he's obviously thinking, God, I'm probably going to get a phone call, he's probably going to be dead one day. Because the chances of people getting off heroin are very slim. And it's not just getting off it, it's staying off it. And a lot of people can't get off drugs and they change it for another drug. They can never break away truly from everything. And I can honestly say that I lived for smoking. I love smoking. I sold weed, and I lived for heroin. These are the drugs that I live for. So when I did start, when I get into the story when I come off heroin, what happened was, I had an argument with my ex-girlfriend, and we were sort of splitting up, and that was it then. I'd just come to the end of my tether, and I thought, right, that's it, I'm going to try and get off heroin. I was on 130 ml of methadone. My brother come back from holiday that day, and for me to turn up at his door, I'd used to turn up once every 6 to 7 months and say, oh, I'm off drugs. And then after a little bit of a conversation, he'd have his eyes peeled on me in his house, because he knew he couldn't really trust me. anything he put down, he'd be in my pocket and I'd be off out the door. He said to me, I knocked the door and he says, God, that's a coincidence, you know. He says, I was praying for you the other day, yesterday in a church. I was in Turkey, now I'm back in the UK. He says, you know what, I was praying for you, but you didn't really believe me. I looked like a skeleton. I was at the door, I had like a hood over my head, the strings pulled tight. All you could see was two little eyes popping out. He says, I'll come in a minute, you know, because I think he understood it was late. And I said to him, oh yeah, I'm off the drugs now, brother, you know what I mean? He was like, he must have thought, and he said, yeah, same old rubbish. I've heard it 100 times. But something must have been playing in his mind, because he'd been praying for me the day before. And he said to me, Troy, I went up and I prayed to Jesus Christ, because I said to Jesus, you know, get my brother off these drugs, because he needs help, you know, and I don't want to find my brother dead somewhere when I come off holiday or whatever. So, and then obviously I was talking to my brother. I said, look, I've split with my ex-partner. And he was like, oh yeah, you know, he goes, after a couple of hours he fed me, then he says, I'll take you back to your old flat. My old flat was just like a drug den. It was like a bomb had hit it. Tin foil everywhere, crack pipes all over the cupboards, there was no food in. And he took me back to the flat. I was on my own, and what must have happened is he must have rang my mother up, and this was late at night, probably 10:30, 11. And he said to my mum, you never guess what, I've just seen my brother tonight. And my mum was like, what have you done with him? He told my mother, he said he's getting off the drugs in this, same thing as he always says. And my mum said to him, God has told me, now is the time to get him. Don't take him back to that flat. She goes, if you've dropped him back over there, you need to get him now. This is our chance to get him and save him and get him off the drugs. So my brother, after about an hour of dropped me off in this town about 2 miles away from where he lives, I've heard the horn beeping. He's come back to the door. He says, Mum wants you back at home. Ma'am. I call my mother Ma'am. I know it's an American thing, but in the UK, I've just been brought up calling my mum Ma'am. So he's come and picked me up and he says, right then, we're not going to let you stop here. You're coming back to Mum's house. You're going to stop there with Mum. So obviously that night I've come home. I've just gave my flat up. I didn't give it up officially, but I left it there. I come home to my mum's house. And my mum says, look, I know Jesus Christ has answered my prayers. I was like, why? She was like, because I've been praying for 6 years, 6 years now, and no one believed me that you were going to come back. You know, and I just think to all them mothers out there and fathers that have got kids and sons and daughters that are on heroin, don't ever give up praying, man. That's one thing I'll tell you. Do not ever give up praying, and make sure your prayers are directed to Jesus Christ. Because throughout all that 6 years, my mum was praying. You know, and most people give up after 6 months. They just think, no, God will never do it. But because my mum's prayer was persistent, you know, God answered that prayer because my mum had faith that God would deliver me. And obviously, upon turning at my mum's door, she was over the moon. Imagine that, been praying for 5 years and bang, your son looks like he's coming back. But me personally, I had other plans. I thought, well, I'm back home. I can sit and now I can have sort of an easy life. I haven't got my ex-partner to help fund with drugs as well, because we were using it both together. All the drugs I get can be my own. These were my own little thoughts inside my head. So after a couple of weeks, I was still on the methadone. I was still scoring drugs at my mum's house, but my mum was just happy to see me back. What happened was, after about 7 or 8 weeks, my brother was showing me some videos, and he said, Troy, I believe Jesus Christ is real. And I was like, oh, alright. And I always thought, me personally, I just thought if there was a God, you've been probably half good, you might go to heaven. And if you've been bad, you probably go to hell, if there even is a hell. If not, if there's no God, then who cares? You know, you just be buried in the grave like every other person, and that's it. Your life's done, forgot about. So, but he started watching some videos on YouTube and things like that, and the videos were talking about, in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, it talks about some events that are going to be taking place before Jesus Christ comes back to earth. And I was like, oh yeah, alright, and let's have a look. We was looking at a few of these videos, and some of the events were quite shocking, because like when you look at these events, that when I weren't a Christian, I never thought that God was going to come back to the earth until I read the Bible. It talks about a judgment. God's going to judge the earth. So obviously I started looking, I think, wow, all these events, it's like earthquakes, famines, pestilences, all these things. I'm thinking, God, I'm not ready. You know, if you're coming back. And I was starting to believe in God, because I thought, my mum's been praying, my brother's prayed, they've brought me back, you know, but I was still using drugs. So what happened was, I come away and I thought to myself, wow, I need to get myself together if God's coming back. Yeah. So I started praying to God. My mum said to me when I went back to the house one day, she goes, Troy, your only hope is God. And I was like, oh, and she went, there's a Bible, and she gave me a cross. She went, your only hope is God. And I thought to myself, how am I going to get off this drug? This methadone was the worst one. That's probably stronger than heroin itself, but I was still using both, smoking weed and smoking fags and having crack sneakily in my mum's toilet. So my brother, he was on about getting me a job at a farms, but just before that, I was sitting in my house, and obviously mum gave me the Bible, and I says, look, what does God want with me? I've robbed people, I've done all sorts of sick things, to obtain heroin, and even things that I weren't doing when I was heroin, I'd done bad things, and I thought, if there is a God, what does he want with me? I'm a wretched man. So over about 5 or 6 weeks, I broke down on my bed and I started praying. And I said, look, Lord Jesus, if you are real, I said, please help me get off this drug. I said, my life is an absolute mess. So over a period of like a couple of days, I was praying, and to be honest, I broke down, I was crying, I was in a bit of an emotional mess. I kept praying every day, and my mum kept praying, and she was just happy to see me back. So what I did is the drug place, where you go to, the rehabilitation place, they give you 130 ml of methadone a day. They put me on like a program over about 18 months where they'd knock me down off methadone, probably down to about 5 ml every 3-4 weeks. But I thought to myself, that's not good enough, and I could go and pick it up and bring it home. I got to a point where they trusted me enough. Normally you have to take it in there because they don't trust you to take it home, probably sell it or whatever. But I were bringing it home. So what I did is I thought, right then, I stopped using heroin, and I thought, right, because I've stopped using the drug I loved anyway, I didn't even like methadone. I thought, I want to get off this methadone. This methadone was tough. It was probably the toughest part of getting off the drug. So what I did is I thought to myself, right, I'm going to start and knock myself down. Although they were knocking it down, the chemist, every 3 weeks, they'd drop it down to from 130 to 125, then it'd go down to 120 for another 3 weeks, then carry on. Probably over a period of 18 months, it probably would have been down to virtually nothing. But I was praying and I said, God help me, please help me get off this drug. And I started knocking it down. Like, I think I went down from 130 to about 90. So over 2 weeks I was on about 90. Then about a week and a half I went down to about 60. And these drops were massive. I was pretty rough, man. I was literally rattling. The only way I could describe it was I could not sit still. I was literally ill. And the worst part of it all was the nights. The nights were the worst. It come to a period where I got down to about 10 mil. Over about 7 weeks I was down to about 10 mil. And that's a rapid drop. The drug place, they wouldn't even recommend it. They reckon it's just too much. It's too much of a shock for your body. But you know what? I was thinking, God, man, I believe you can help me. And you know what? I was praying, I was reading the Bible, I was reading prayers. You must have heard of the Lord is my shepherd. That's Psalm 23, that is, in the Bible. If you ever want to start using the Bible and reading it, this is one psalm you could read and memorize and put in your heart, because God will deliver you. It tells you about, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And when you just have the thought and confidence that you think God's with you, although a lot of people think, well, why didn't he just deliver you there and then? One thing with God is, although it's a rough ride, he'll go through it with you. And that's what I've learned because obviously now I've become a Christian. I'll let you know that towards the end of the story. But so I detoxed and I got down to about 10-20 mil, and I was seriously ill. I could not sleep. The only way I could find comfort was running the bath and jumping in it 5 to 6 times a day. So for about 4 weeks, that's all I did every time, and the nights all I can say is the nights were horrific. So obviously after praying, and it got to about the 8th or 9th week, I was off the heroin and off the methadone, but I was still ill. I was cold every single day. And one night, this is a true story, this is why I believe now I know what I know, and I look back, I believe that obviously I had some sort of drug addicted demon inside me. I don't know what it was, but I was praying. I was in my bed one night, and I felt like I was being strangled. I was lying on my bed, and I just felt like I woke up, but I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even move. I felt like something invisible was holding my neck, and all I was going was like that. And after about a couple of minutes of being, literally, I felt like I was being choked in my bed. I jumped out of my bed and I ran into the kitchen, and I see my mum in there. I ran into my mum's bedroom and I went, Mum, I feel like I've just been strangled in my bed. And my mum said to me, I've just been in the bathroom, and as I walked past your door, I could see a light coming under the bottom of the door. She goes, was you already up? I went, no, there was no light in my room. She goes, I could hear something like choking. I goes, that was me. I was choking in my bedroom. And I goes, and I never had no light on. There shouldn't have been no light, beam of light. And now I think about it, I probably believe God was delivering me, and I was probably being strangled by a demon. I don't know. But when I look back, I just think something was strangling me, and I believe that was the war that was going on between. When I was asking God for his help, God was delivering me from some spirit of addiction, or I don't know what it was. So obviously that was a testimony in itself. I believe Jesus Christ delivered me. So after that, I woke up the next day and I was telling my mum about it. She goes, yeah, I believe you probably was being strangled, because I could hear a noise. It's actually scared my mum. When I was in the bedroom, it actually scared her. She ran back in the bedroom because she could hear some sort of noise. She didn't know what it was. So obviously after that, that set me out on a course of seeking God. And I thought, wow, now I need to keep praying, man. Whatever happened to me was really bad. So, God, I've got so much to tell. So after that, I got off the drugs and I went back to, my brother got me a job on a farm. I was working for an old lady. She was worth probably £1 million. He says, I hope I can trust you working on this farm. If I get you a job, you make sure you don't mess around. So I was out in nature. The woman just said to me, just care for my fences, build all the boundary fences back up if they're broken down, cut the grass. She even gave me like a polytunnel to grow tomatoes and broccoli and things like that. And I think this was played a major part in my healing, coming off drugs and just being out in nature. It's what God wants us to do. He wants, I think that's way of God talking to us in a way. And nature's such a great way of healing people, being out in the open, clean, fresh air, away from all the hustle and bustle of the world and all temptations. So obviously after that, I cut myself off from all my friends, yeah? And what it was is, when I started telling them I believe in Jesus Christ, they just laughed at me. They just said, this is just, now he's gone crazy. He's took that many drugs, he's gone mad. So what I did is, that didn't bother me. I just thought, look, Lord, I believe you're real. So now, over a period of time, I was still smoking, I was still swearing, and I was still smoking weed. Obviously, I'd give all the hard ones up. So what I did is, my brother rang me up one day and he goes, you've now trying to be a Christian, it's not right selling drugs, is it? Because I was selling weed still to make a little bit of money. And obviously that was a bit of a conviction, yeah. So I thought, oh Lord, it's not right me selling drugs to people, is it? Ripping them off. And you know what, to be honest, I never made no money selling drugs. I used to give people good deals. So it come to a point where it was foolishness for me to even think about selling drugs, because I was a nice guy. I weren't the sort of drug dealer that wanted to make money and rip people off. I wanted people to have a good deal. So obviously I thought to myself, well, better give that in. So I gave it up. And then I said to my brother, right, now what I need to do is, I need to find a way of finding a church. Stay over there, I'm doing something. I need to find a way of finding a church. So what we did is we started studying, and obviously I'm looking and I'm thinking, God, there's millions of churches out there, but they're all saying different things. So what we started doing, me and my brother started studying, and I was going to join a few different groups, but after really studying the Bible and actually coming to a knowledge of the truth in the Bible, and looking at the history and seeing if there is really a God, because in school all we're taught is that something come from nothing, the Big Bang Theory. That's what we're taught. And anybody with a brain cell would actually think of that and think, how can something come from nothing? And also we're taught that, we evolved from a puddle of slime, and over thousands of years we've become humans, and probably our apes and monkeys were at that, our most recent ancestors, and before that it was other species. But I always had questions to ask, if we come from monkeys, why are monkeys still walking alongside us? Why haven't they evolved? Or another questions that I started to ask myself. If why is it there's millions of monkey bones in the ground, millions of human bones in the ground, but there's a big massive gap and there's hardly anything of these others missing links apparently, because these are only theories, what they've given us in schools. So I believe you have to have enough faith to believe in evolution and the Big Bang Theory, then you do have to have in God, because we've got consciences, something tells us we're doing wrong, it's been implanted in us. So obviously over a period of time, me and my brother have I've said to my brother, right, that's it now, I need to be a Christian. But I was always swearing every day, and when I was swearing, 3 or 4 words would be an F or a B or a C, or, I ain't going to say what I was saying because it's just not right. But every word, and my brother used to say, Guy, because my brother was quite a wild-mannered person, he'd say, God, it's like every time I'm with you, you just can't stop swearing. And I was like, oh, come on, some of the obstacles I'd given up. And I went home that night, and there's a verse that says in the Bible, set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth, and keep the door of my lips. And there's also a verse that says, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. So I started getting these verses and saying, God, I want to join a church. I want to be a Christian, because now I believe there's a God. I believe you are the only true God, Jesus Christ. You are the only one that's delivered me. I don't believe there's other gods out there. I believe Jesus is the only true God. So I said to him, Lord, if I'm going to join a church and I'm cussing every word that's coming out of my mouth, I says, I need you to seal my mouth shut so I don't swear. So this is how you know it's miraculous. So within a couple of weeks I was praying, and before I'd swear and it'd come out, then I'd realise I'd done it. But what was happening to me now, it was coming to the point before I swore, something would say, it'd come there and I'd be able to stop. So about 3 weeks later I was back with my brother, and he was like, after about an hour of talking to me, he went, wow. I went, well, what's up? He went, unbelievable. He goes, I've sat and spoke to you for over an hour and you haven't even swore. I says, bro, man, I goes, this is God. I goes, God's been helping me. I goes, now what happens is before I go to swear, I'll get a little warning. It was just, I felt like I knew just before I was about to swear, I'd have something to stop me, and then I wouldn't swear. So obviously I've come off heroin, I've stopped selling weed, I've stopped swearing, but I'm still smoking. So I was watching this sermon one night, and this guy says, I'm going to give you a 5 seconds stop smoking plan. So I joined this church in between stopping swearing and stopping smoking. I joined the church, and I'll be clear and honest with you, I joined a church called the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The reason why I joined this church is because when I read the Bible, I believe they're the only church actually with the present truth. It doesn't mean they're the only church that are going to heaven. I believe there's going to be many Christians that love God with all their heart. But one thing I can tell you, after searching throughout most groups, Baptists, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're the ones I came down to that I thought were actually following the Bible as clear as it could be followed. And the reason why they're called Seventh-day Adventist, because one of the 4th commandments, we're told any church will tell you to keep 10 commandments. But when they get to the 4th one, they seem to have a problem with it, because they keep Sunday. Sunday is the first day of the week. But God tells us to keep the 7th day. In that commandment, the 4th one, he tells us to keep the 7th day, the Sabbath. And they will try and say it was for Jews and all this lot, but that means, is it alright to keep 9 but not 10? So really they've got themselves a problem. So when I look to the Bible, Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Jesus' commandments are his Father's commandments, which is the 10 commandments. One of them was the Sabbath day, which is Saturday. So I had to find a church that kept the whole commandments and kept the Sabbath day, which is why I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I believe they've got the present truth now, and I believe they can help you live a great life, health-wise and everything. That truly God directed me to this church, and I'll give you the reason how I got there as well. I was studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I had questions to ask that they just couldn't answer me. They used to knock my door, and I'd say, oh, come in, because I said to my mum, I'm going to join these guys. But there were questions like, they said Jesus is like a demigod, he's been sort of like created, and I just used a verse that said, there's a verse in the Bible that they just couldn't answer. It says, who Jesus, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. I said, they just couldn't answer that one. And then there's another one. I'll be out in a moment, yeah? Give me 2 minutes. One, Troy. So, And then they've got other issues where they will not give a blood transfusion, and say if their child's dying, they won't give their own blood to the child. And I just think there's a lot of corruption going on there, because Jesus says no greater love as man than this, than to lay down his life for himself. So how a Jehovah's Witness can stand there and watch their child die because their group has told them they can't give a blood transfusion to their child is just ridiculous, over some verse that says you shall not eat the meat with the blood in it. It's just totally corrupt. So there was one of the questions that took me away from that group straight away, because I thought that's not a Christian group you want to be a part of. Doesn't mean that there's some I'm not saying there's not some nice Jehovah's Witnesses that love God with all their heart. They're just caught up in a few errors that are quite bad. So what I did is, I was watching a video one day and there was a guy pointing at the screen going, and God wants you to come and join us. And I was looking at my brother and says, who's this guy? Should we look into him? We'll have a look. So I had a look into the guy that was preaching, and just by coincidence, the guy that was pointing at the screen was a Seventh-day Adventist. I says, who are these weird group? What a weird name. So obviously, I thought it was probably some sort of cultish group. I went there, and we were looking for a local one. I found a local church. We went there, and you know what? No, when I got in there, I thought, this is a church that worships God properly. I could feel, I just knew. And they wanted to study the Bible every day. And if they'd say to me, if we can't answer the Bible question for you, then we'll do all we can. And if they wanted me to answer questions that I had, like, if there is a God, why is there suffering? If there is this, why is that? All the questions that you want to ask. They had an open book, and they said, let's go, and we want to answer every question you've got. And I can honestly say, they answered virtually every question I had. So obviously, after that I became an Adventist. I was still smoking outside the church. I used to run into the church on a Saturday, which is the Sabbath day. It starts from Friday sundown till Saturday sundown. So I'd go into the church on the Saturday morning. I'd only be able to sit and listen for about an hour. I'd run outside, I'd have a fag. They were so kind to me in the church, I can imagine me, I'd have been judging people straight away, like, this guy's a smoker. But I come out of the church, and over a period of time, they didn't say nothing. They didn't hit me about me smoking. I think they must have realised, that God must have been working, because when me and my brother turned up at this church, it was a majority an African church, and when we turned up, two white guys just come in the door, and they must have looked around and thought, God must have brought these here, yeah, because I looked rough as hell. My brother looked alright. So obviously, I came into the church, and I went home and I was still smoking. And what happened was, I was watching a sermon, and the guy on the thing, he said, if you're going to get baptised, you're newborn, does God want you smoking? He said about 5 things. So I got my tobacco and my fags, and I chucked them in the bin, and I says, Lord, I'm never going to smoke after this day. And bang, I never smoked after that day. The crazy thing was, I used to find fags on the way in from work. I'd never find fags when I was smoking, then packets would be appearing all over the place. But God, God's done so much for me, and I just want to say to those parents and those guys, I know you guys out there that are going to be struggling on a heroin, persist, pray. You can go to drug counsellors all you want and things like that, but they won't deliver you. There's one person that can deliver you, and it'll be Christ. But I tell you what, the battle won't be easy won, because there's a war going on, and Satan, if he's got you through heroin, he'll try and keep you there. But one thing I want to say is, and I will do an update on the video, and if anybody wants me to post more, because my story is really in depth, I've just skinned along the top of it. I've been clean, let me just say, I've been clean for 8 years. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I live a sort of like a vegetarian lifestyle, because heroin destroyed me from within and from without. That is a personal choice, but it's also, I believe, it's a biblical choice. God expects us to eat really healthy. He wants us to be healthy, body and mind. But so that's my testimony. I'm being called out now because people want me to go swimming. But I do want to give you an update. I hope you love it. And if you want me to pray or anything for you guys, I'm more than willing to pray. We've got a church people that are willing to pray. If you want to get in touch with me, you can always get in touch with me on the video below. Just leave messages, comments, and I'm willing to help people. I'm willing to give Skype calls to guys that are struggling, whatever you need. God is able to deliver you. Don't lose faith in God. And when people say there is no God, there is a God. There's no question. So as I bring the video to an end, I will try and because I know I've skimmed it. I've been in a rush, but I wanted to get the video up. I hope you love it, and I tell you what, just for the parents and the people that are struggling on drugs, pray to Jesus. Find a church, but preferably I'd find a Seventh-day Adventist church, because they will help you, and they've helped me sincerely, because they've got a health message as well. They like to promote health just as much as they promote worshipping God. So God bless you all, and may the Lord Jesus Christ bless you. May He keep your family safe, and may the mothers and fathers out there that have got sons and daughters struggling with any kind of drug find hope in this video through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you very much.